Won't you be my neighbor? Hello, everyone. My name is Danny. This review is going to be for the movie called A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. This is a 2019 film. It is rated PG. It's directed by Marielle Heller. It stars Tom Hanks, Matthew Rhys, and Susan Kelechi Watson. The runtime is an hour and 47 minutes. The description is nice and short and sweet. Based on the true story of a real life friendship between Fred Rogers and journalist Tom Junod. This is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Well, I'll say this right off the bat. I was very surprised that this movie was going to be coming out in theaters because we just had a movie about Mr. Rogers. It was a nice documentary. It was very interesting. Had lots of clips of the real Mr. Rogers, behind the scenes stuff, explaining some of his controversy, explaining some of his reactions in the workplace, all kinds of stuff. It was a really awesome documentary. And then Tom Hanks turns around and says, "Oh, I'm going to make one almost within the same year." And I just don't understand it. Why we need movies of the same kind almost every year, just by completely different people, but on the same subject or involving the same person. We have another Little Women coming out. We just had a Little Women. We have all kinds of movies like this. I don't understand why people do it. It really does kind of bother me that the documentary was a success, and then we have this, because I don't know what this movie was trying to accomplish that the documentary already didn't. That the documentary didn't. Tom Hanks, I will always go see his movies, even the weird ones, because he's Tom Hanks. He's going to be a legendary person until the day he dies. The Post wasn't that exciting. Some of the other movies he makes aren't that exciting. This one was on the edge, but, he's Tom Hanks. Um, the storyline of this movie was, as the one line description says, not completely about Mr. Rogers, but of course you're going to go see the movie because it's about Mr. Rogers. So it's kind of a give and take kind of situation between the audience and the people that made this movie, and the fact that Tom Hanks is in it, and the fact that it's about Mr. Rogers. A lot of younger people nowadays, 15 and below, 18 and below, are not going to know who Mr. Rogers is. They're not going to go see this. So this is for the older generation. But, do we really need this movie? Did we really need it? This movie is about a lot of serious stuff. It's about a lot of situations. It's a lot about not Mr. Rogers. It's not his story. It's a story of his interaction, and he was one person that this other guy interacted with. And it really should have been called something about this Tom character that does the reporting about Mr. Rogers. Because it's so much about him. It's really his story. It's really his movie. If I ate a cupcake one time in the same restaurant as Johnny Depp, you wouldn't make a movie about Johnny Depp sitting in a restaurant where somebody ate a cupcake with him. You'd make my story about me eating a cupcake and I saw Johnny friggin' Depp. So I don't understand the strategy of this. I don't understand why we needed this movie, except for the fact that it turned this journalist's life around by being able to write an article and get to know Fred Rogers. It changed his life. So that's my big thing that's bugging me after seeing this yesterday in theaters, and had a nice crowd that was older people, Not a lot of laughs, not a lot of shocked moments, but it's a very serious, very delicate movie. And so you need to know that going in. The other thing to say is that the parts that it has about Mr. Rogers are nice. It does show his interaction with children. It does show his, behind the scenes, kind of how he was when he was voicing the voice of Daniel the Tiger and King Friday and stuff like that. And those are interesting parts, but, why are we showing that when this is a story between him and this guy? Yeah, that's part of his story, and we get part of his story, the other guy, but I really don't understand the strategy of this and why they would include the things they did and not include other things. I mean, they could have made this a really longer movie if they included all I wanted them to, but I just don't understand the point of it. So, moving past that, I did enjoy myself for parts of it. I enjoyed the songs. I enjoyed the show. I enjoyed getting to know this guy and getting to know his story and what he had going on. And I don't agree with the straightforwardness that Tom Hanks brought to Fred Rogers. Because, like I said, we've already seen the documentary that just got made. Tom Hanks took the right approach about thinking about his words, but from the documentary, we already learned that he was very gentle about his words. He wasn't direct with people. He didn't say, like, the thing that, was the only thing to say. If something was maybe a little bit touchy or something, Fred Rogers wouldn't say that. He wouldn't just blurt it out. And Tom Hanks is a strong person, so he did. He brought that to the character, that he blurted out the one thing to say. The other part of this movie where Tom Hanks' approach, it gets really slow, especially in the middle. It's trying to let us in on this part. It's trying to give us this scene. It's trying to say this thing about the other character. It's trying to do this. And I think it's just too busy. It's just not focused enough. It gets really slow and everything. So while I appreciate this movie addressing some very serious subjects, especially with how you address those subjects with children and an audience on TV like Fred Rogers did, and they brought us into this world of Fred Rogers knowing a person and trying to get to know him rather than just brushing him off or anything like that. There's a lot to be said about appreciating this, but I also think they took the wrong approach on this. So I think it's kind of a middle of the road kind of movie for me. Here in my notebook, I gave it a C. I think that's pretty fair. I think there's going to be a lot of dialogue about this because we've had the documentary, we've had Tom Hanks' version, and maybe we'll have more versions in the future. He was a symbol, and this movie is about him being that symbol. So I do appreciate that facet. But I just think that, you need to be careful with these kind of movies because they're not for children. It's almost uncomfortable for adults. And they didn't advertise this as Fred and him. They painted this out as, oh, look, Tom Hanks is Mr. Rogers. And so that's why everybody's going to go see it. So I would be careful. I would be sensitive. I would watch out for what you're expecting versus what's in this film. I don't appreciate everything Tom brought to the character, like straightforwardness, but I do appreciate the gentle attitude and the general version of Mr. Rogers that he brought onto the screen so that people could see it. But I just don't think it's for children, and I don't know how many adults are going to connect with this version of a movie about Mr. Rogers. So that's why I'm going to give it a C for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Thanks a lot, guys. My name's Danny. If you like this or any of my other videos, try and give something to watch. Like and subscribe to my channel if you would. And enjoy your movies. Thanks.